Welcome to the Land House channel. Today I'm going to be installing the Big Battery Ethos 48 volt lithium iron phosphate whole house battery. They sent over the 15 kilowatt hour battery to be installed here in my 20x30 workshop. Now I do have a separate video breaking down all of the specifications of this battery. If you want to see that, I'll have a link in the description down below. This video is going to focus on installing this battery into my electrical closet. So let's head over there now and get this battery installed. To begin the installation, I have the mounting plate for the floor. Now you'll see these rubber stoppers here. You may think that those need to go on the ground, but no, they actually face upwards because on the bottom of the battery modules, there are indentions that will rest on top of that, and that will prevent the battery from sliding around on the base. So keep that in mind. The rubber stoppers face up. This is my utility closet where I'm going to be installing this Ethos battery system. Now my space requirement is a minimum of 27 inches in width, 5 foot in height, and then 6 inches out from the wall, plus an inch or two for spacing. So let's go ahead and place our bottom here. I'm going to put this on the ground where I want the battery to be placed, leaving about an inch gap from the wall. Now there is a bit more space in the back of this bracket than there is in the front, so keep that in mind. Now that I have the base where I want it, I'm going to scoot the battery over here. Now the back of the battery has a bunch of screws, and that's what's going to be facing towards the wall. So I'm just going to scoot the battery over and then place it here on this bracket. After the first battery is in place, it's time to put the second battery up and just place it here on the next set of these rubber stoppers. Yep, it's definitely heavy. Now that I have the base and the 3 battery modules installed, it's time to get the control box on top. And this will just simply go on top just as the batteries did before. There we go. Now that I have everything stacked up as it should be, it's time to get these mounted to the wall so that they're not going to be tipping over and falling to the ground. Now it's very important to mount the battery to the wall so that it doesn't tilt forward and fall over. Each battery unit is shipped with these 2 brackets. The 2 holes here will go into the wall, and these tracks over here are going to allow for a different gap spacing to go into the wall. So in order to get this bracket attached, where the 2 battery modules meet up, there are 2 screws right here, and those need to be removed. Place those screws back into the bracket on the larger track here. Now, depending on your spacing, you may need to adjust this up or down, but for me, I think right here is going to be ideal. That gives me about an inch, maybe a little over an inch space between the wall and the battery. Now on my wall, I have 3/4 inch plywood on top of 1/2 inch plywood, and so there is plenty of material for me to mount to. You might want to add a board behind your battery, or make sure you have at least one side of the battery in a stud. So just definitely keep that in mind. Now the hardware that was included to mount this bracket, I have just taken my drill and found a drill bit that is a little bit smaller than the threads. And that way I can go ahead and pre-drill in here. Next on my drill, I've got a socket to drill adapter that I can use to put these included screws into the wall with. Be sure to drop that screw behind your battery. I have that first bracket done here on this side. As you can see, that should hold the battery to the wall very nicely. I went ahead and got this side done as well, as you can see back over there. Let me go ahead and get the rest of these installed, and I'll bring you back whenever it's done and we can get to work on the wiring. The Big Battery Ethos is a great option for both on-grid and off-grid use. Now, you'll hear me talk about the Lux Power 12K, which is this big inverter right here. But if you want to have an off-grid system and still have 12 kilowatts, you can buy 2 of the 6K inverters and run them together to get 12K and save a bunch of money. So keep that in mind. I'll have links for that in the description down below. I now have all 3 battery units and the control box mounted to the wall and resting on the floor. Good to have this thing set into place. Let's move on to wiring and cables. Starting off with the communication cables. These are the Ethernet that have the screw-on attachment on both ends. So there's one of these shipped with each battery to connect one battery to the next. And then there's also a much longer cable, and this is going to attach the control box up here to the Lux Power inverter. So let's go ahead and get all 4 of these attached to the system. I apologize for this angle. There's not much room to work with back here. There is a terminal right here, COM port 1, that I want to unscrew, and that little stopper can just fall over to the side. And then up here there are 2 more. Let's see, this one over here in the back is labeled battery, and so I'm going to loosen that one up as well. Take my communication port or cable and go ahead and attach that. These just thread on and make a pretty quick connection there. And I'm going to take this down below through this little handle and get that attached down here. All right, just like that. And now whenever I put the cover out here on the side, it should hide all of these cables from being seen. There we go, that's the first one. Now the port over here is labeled inverter, and that longer cable is going to go from there over to the Lux Power inverter. I'm going to plug this up right in here, get that threaded into place. Now, in hopes of making this look pretty, I'm going to take this cable and go behind the battery and then over to the Lux Power inverter. Now, if I move over here to the Lux inverter, there is a bunch of ports right here. This one up here on the top says battery communication. So I'm going to take that Ethernet cable and just attach it right there, and that should be able to talk to the battery. Moving down to the second battery, just like the battery to the control box, I'm going to loosen up this and the one from the previous battery, and then I can just connect these 2 cables to connect battery to battery. Now that I have the communication wires installed, it's time to get the cables done. Now there are 3 different lengths of cable. So here is a very short one. Here is one that's much longer. And then lastly, there's one that is medium size right there. So these all go in a specific place. So let's go ahead and get over here and install them. First, I have the 2 shortest cables, and those are going to go from the lower control box to the top of the battery down here. So let me go ahead and pull off these protectors. Now, one thing to note, these 2 terminals right here are the same electrically. I'm just going to take this short black cable and go up here and meet up with this one right here. Snap that into position. You'll hear it pop whenever it makes a connection. There we go. And then move down here to the bottom one on the battery. There we go. And then next I'm going to do the same with the red cable. Let those 2 match up. Very good. All right, now we can move on to the next set of terminals. Now for the medium length cables, we're going to connect this battery to this battery. Once again, just have to remove all those protectors from the terminals. All right, slide this cable down in here and match these up. The cable length is just long enough to properly fit in here, so there's no extra slack that you have to deal with. And then the last set is going to go down here at the bottom, and it will be just like this connection right here. Now the last cables are long enough to go from the very bottom down here all the way back up to the top of the control board. My understanding for why this is done is because this battery system is able to produce 200 amps. And that would be a lot of power to just send through a single cable. And so they add this second cable here, which actually I'm going to go ahead and sneak it through the inside of that handle. And that will allow basically the amps to have two different paths to go down to. And it won't all be sent down the same cable to overheat it. So yeah, I'm just going to bring this one cable all the way up to the top and get it connected. Once again, it's very cramped in here, but you can see there are two different connections up here at the top, and those go all the way down to the bottom and meet the bottom of the battery down there. And then between the batteries, there's a black and a red cable there, and then up here we've got the cable that goes from the last battery up to the control box here on the top. All right, the cabling is now done on this side. What I need to do next is take one of these terminals over here and run that to my Lux Power inverter over here. Now the system that I'm installing here is a 15 kilowatt hour battery. That means that I have 3 batteries rated at 5 kilowatts. In order to make sure that these parallel batteries are going to talk to the BMS and the inverter, I have to set the ID bits. In the user manual, you can go in here and find the ID address, and you can see number 1 is pin 4 is down, 2 is pin 3 down, 3 is pin 4 and 3 down, and then so that's all you need to have is those top 3 right there. So let's go ahead and set those. The ID bits are found over here on the side of the battery, and it's going to be really hard for me to show this here on camera, but there you go. Okay, so this top one, I want to find this dip switch right here and set it. Number 4 is going to be up, and the other 3 are going to be down. So now if I move down here to the next one, right down in here, I want to make sure that the 3rd one is up, and then lastly, I need to make sure, let's see, yep, 3 and 4. Oh, I also wanted to show you here, this is how you access these. There's a little drawer, or a little cover here that you have to unscrew, and then that'll open up that access. So now if I go in here and I can say number 3 and 4 on this last battery need to be activated. Now on systems that have more batteries, then you would go in there on the next batteries and change that ID bit. But for now, that should do it for us. Now once again, it's very hard to show you from this angle, but the control box and each battery has its own breaker, and that's just going to be a little drawer that flips up here, and then you pop that breaker up. I've already turned this one on. Now the batteries down here are maybe a little bit more difficult to get to because they've got those cables in the way, but you can move those to the side and turn those breakers back on. So make sure all of those are on. Now I don't have the cable hooked up yet to go to the inverter, but let's go ahead and turn the batteries on and see what we get. So down here there is a button, and it will show the state of charge whenever those are all turned on. So here you can see state of charge is 100%, well, 3/4 of the way, and it looks like it's going to be that way on all of the batteries. I move up here to our display. We get zoomed in. 54% on the battery is what we've got. Voltage 52.69, and the capacity is 300 amp hours. So very nice. That seems to be working so far. The last cables to install are going to go from the control box here over to the Lux Power inverter. So they have included 4 cables, and they are all 5-foot length. Because this is able to produce such a high amperage, they have basically doubled up the cables so that it will be able to reduce the amount of amps going through any single cable and not overheat these, or you'd have to have quite a large cable. So let's go ahead and, just like the connectors from battery to battery or battery to control box. I'm going to connect this over here and then bring this over into the inverter. I'm going to place my cables behind the control box to make the system look nice and pretty, and also to give me enough room to get over to my inverter. Ouch! Woohoo! That hurt. Let's go ahead and get all of these connected down in here. Like that. I just ran the 4 battery cables up under the Lux Power here and got them attached to the battery positives and negatives right here. Now I've not turned on the battery breakers here just yet. Let's go into the settings of the Ethos and change the BMS to communicate with the Lux Power. We go ahead and turn this on up here. Turning that breaker on right there. In order to get the battery to communicate with the inverter, I'm going to press the enter button. The big battery splash screen will appear on the screen for a moment. I can press the back button here to go into the protocol settings. I can hold down this button for 5 seconds. It's the back button for 5 seconds. And then push back once. All right, now I can go into these settings here. This is the RS485. I'm going to push down to number 2 for Lux, press enter, go down to the CAN protocol, press enter, go down to number 6 for Lux, press enter there, and now I can go back to the main screen. Now you'll see it still says 1 and 1 on the CAN protocol. I need to actually turn off the batteries now by clicking over here on the power buttons. So I'm going to turn all 3 batteries off. You can't see it off camera there. Okay, I'm going to wait for a second. The display has gone dark. Once again, I'm going to turn all of those power buttons back on once again. And if it worked correctly, when this display comes back up, we'll be able to see the different numbers here for the communication. Yes, we've got 6 for the CAN and 2 for the RS485. So that has worked properly. Now if we move over here to our Lux inverter, we can now see the battery state is 54%, and that seems to be working just fine. Very good. All right, our inverter is doing what it should. It's talking to our battery. It's so nice to have the Big Battery Ethos now talking with the Lux inverter. Tomorrow when the sun comes out, we should see the solar from here charging the battery. The last thing to do for this install is to put the decorative covers here on the sides to cover up the wiring and cables. Here on the handle, there's a single screw that I'm going to loosen up. Go ahead and take that out. And now this plastic piece, which is mostly just for decoration and to cover those wires and cables for safety, will go there on the side. And then I'm just going to replace that single screw here on the handle. Now, of course, if a breaker were to trip, you would have to take that back off, but you can see it's quite easy with just a single screw. With the side protective plastic covers on, you can no longer see those wires or breakers and cables. They're all hidden back there. Now I am going to leave off this one for the time being because of the way I've got my battery cables draped over to the back. It would be ideal if those came up over the top because the access port here in the plastic is open on the top. But I think it looks pretty good still, having everything enclosed. Very safe and secure around anybody or pets. I now have the Big Battery Ethos 48 volt lithium iron phosphate whole house battery installed and talking with the Lux Power inverter. If you want to see this in operation, then stick around to the next video on the Big Battery, where I will have some solar coming in and it'll be charging up the battery, and then I'll also be using the Lux Power inverter to run all the circuits here in my workshop. So definitely stay tuned for that. Now, if you're interested in either the Big Battery or the Lux Power inverter, I will have links to those down below. Big Battery has offered a great discount code on their products, and it will save you potentially thousands of dollars if you use that code. So definitely check that out in the links down below. I'm Seth with Land to House, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.